In September 1988, a 28-year-old wildlife photographer named Julie Ward vanished in one of the most celebrated nature reserves on Earth, Kenya's Maasai Mara. She had traveled alone to witness the great wildebeest migration, chasing the adventure of a lifetime with her camera in hand. But something went wrong. Days later, what remained of her was found in a burned clearing. Her body dismembered, her death cloaked in layers of denial, silence, and contradiction. What followed was not just a murder investigation, but a decades-long battle. One man's relentless pursuit of truth through false leads, closed doors, and official stonewalling on 2 continents. The deeper he dug, the darker the story became. Welcome to Bad Things. Join us as we trace the timeline, unpack the theories, and ask the question at the heart of it all. What most likely happened to Julie Ward? Julie Ward's African journey began in February 1988. The 28-year-old publishing assistant from Suffolk had taken a 6-month sabbatical to travel and photograph wildlife, a passion that had brought her to the plains of East Africa. By early September, she was in Kenya, accompanied by a friend, an Australian named Glenn Burns. The two were driving through the Maasai Mara Game Reserve, chasing the spectacle of the annual wildebeest migration, when their Suzuki Jeep broke down near the Mara Serena Lodge. On September 5th, Glenn left to return to Nairobi for spare parts, while Julie decided to remain behind. The following morning, September 6th, she set out alone toward the Sand River campsite, intending to retrieve some personal items. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. When she failed to return, concern spread quickly. Back in England, her father, John Ward, was alerted and immediately boarded a flight to Kenya. Upon arriving, he joined local police and rangers in a search that stretched over several days. Julie's mother, Jan Ward, later described the moment she learned her daughter was missing. "Fear takes hold of you. You can hardly move," she said. The uncertainty was unbearable. On September 13th, just 1 week after Julie disappeared, John Ward made a horrifying discovery himself. In a remote part of the Mara, near the edge of a brush fire, he stumbled upon the charred remains of a body. What he found was a severed human leg and part of a jawbone, both burned. Despite the condition, John recognized them as belonging to his daughter. He would later present investigators with photographs of the leg and jaw, all that was left of her. Kenyan officials were immediately reluctant to call it murder. The first explanation offered was that Julie had been attacked by lions and her remains consumed or scattered. The fire, they suggested, was coincidental, the result of natural brush burning. A Kenyan police inspector went so far as to suggest Julie might have harmed herself, calling her a loose girl and implying that her death was self-inflicted. The family was appalled. "Don't be silly, she would never do that," Jan told her husband in disbelief. Dr. Adele Shaker, the British-trained pathologist who examined the remains, initially reported clean incisions on Julie's bones, not ragged, torn damage typical of animal attacks. He concluded she had been dismembered with a machete, doused in gasoline and set on fire. But shortly afterward, Dr. Shaker was pressured by Kenyan officials to change his findings. His report was altered to say the limbs were torn and cracked. Years later, he admitted, "I was pressured into signing false reports." Meanwhile, John Ward began to question not only the explanations, but the intentions behind them. He openly accused the Kenyan authorities of attempting to cover up a murder, potentially to avoid a scandal that could damage the country's vital safari tourism industry. They wanted it to be an accident, he said, but he also began to hear whispers that someone with political connections might be involved. Frustrated with the slow progress, John pushed for British involvement. In early 1989, Scotland Yard sent a team to assist. By 1990, under pressure from John and the media, the UK Foreign Office authorised a full investigation by the Metropolitan Police. That inquiry soon led to charges against 2 junior park rangers who were on duty in the Mara when Julie disappeared. They stood trial in Nairobi in 1992 but were acquitted due to lack of evidence. No motive, no physical proof. Still convinced the truth was being hidden, John returned to Kenya repeatedly over the following years, eventually making more than 100 trips and spending over £1 million of his own money. In 1997, a new Kenyan investigative team reopened the case. Their focus shifted to Simon Ole Makala, the chief park warden who had led the original search and had guided John to Julie's remains. Makala was arrested and went on trial in 1999, accused of misleading search teams and potentially knowing where Julie's body was before it was found. But the evidence again fell short. While inconsistencies in his statements raised questions, prosecutors could not establish a direct link between Makala and Julie's murder. He was acquitted, and outside the court, his supporters celebrated. In 2004, John Ward finally secured a British coroner's inquest into Julie's death. Over 6 days in Ipswich, a clearer picture emerged. Evidence had been manipulated, reports had been falsified, and diplomatic sensitivities had shaped the handling of the case. Dr. Shaker testified about the pressure he faced, while a former UK consular official said she had been warned to back off. An MI6 officer testifying anonymously confirmed that intelligence agents had been monitoring the case, and that shortly before a Kenyan police official attempted to convince John Julie had died in a lightning strike, British intelligence had spoken with him. The inquest concluded that Julie had been unlawfully killed. The coroner, Dr. Peter Dean, called the official explanations an unbelievable confection of misinformation. Still, no one was charged. In 2009, British detectives returned to Kenya with new forensic tools and reopened the cold case. A witness came forward in 2011, providing a detailed account of what happened in Mara in 1988. He claimed to have seen Julie's murder and identified one of President Daniel Arap Moi's sons as being present that night. The testimony was taken by police in London, then sealed. No action followed. In 2025, nearly 37 years after Julie's death, the Ward family went public with that information. They revealed that a signed witness statement implicating Jonathan Moy, the president's eldest son, had been sitting in a police file ignored for over a decade. According to Bob Ward, Julie's brother, it was locked in a safe in Lewisham. It's unthinkable. At last, the silence was beginning to break. In the years since Julie Ward's death, a number of competing theories have emerged. Some official, some whispered, others built on scraps of testimony and years of persistence. Each proposes a different version of events in the Maasai Mara that September, and each points in a different direction. As the investigation unfolded, these possibilities hardened into distinct paths. No two can be true, but any one of them could be. Number 1. The accident theory. The earliest explanation came from Kenyan authorities, that Julie had fallen victim to nature. They suggested she was struck by lightning, killed by wild animals, or became stranded and ended it herself. In one version, she was attacked by lions, and a subsequent brush fire destroyed her remains. Another described a tragic breakdown in the bush, followed by exposure and misadventure. Some accounts proposed a combination of causes, a mosaic of chance and misfortune. These ideas were presented quickly and publicly, allowing officials to suggest closure without assigning blame. Number 2. The wrong place at the wrong time theory. Another line of thinking suggested Julie may have stumbled across something she wasn't meant to see. The Maasai Mara in the 1980s was remote and not without danger. Smugglers, poachers, or armed criminals may have been operating in the area. If Julie had witnessed an illegal act, or even just crossed paths with the wrong people, it's possible she was silenced to prevent exposure. The theory gained traction among those who believed her killing was opportunistic, not planned. Under this scenario, her death was brutal but unintentional, the result of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Number 3. The Ranger Theory. Suspicion also turned inward, toward those tasked with overseeing the reserve. 2 junior rangers were the first to be charged with Julie's murder. Later attention shifted to the park's chief warden, who had led the original search and directed John Ward to the remains. These men were on the ground, armed, and had intimate knowledge of the terrain. Some believed the crime may have been committed by rogue elements within the park service, either acting independently or attempting to cover up an incident gone wrong. The idea that those responsible were already embedded within the search effort added a disturbing twist. Number 4. The Political Protection Theory. Perhaps the most serious theory, and the most carefully suppressed, was that Julie Ward was killed by someone connected to Kenya's ruling elite, and that the murder was covered up from the highest levels. As early as the 1990s, quiet allegations pointed toward a powerful individual whose presence in the Mara that week had been concealed. A former intelligence officer later claimed to have witnessed Julie being attacked by multiple men, though he never named them. In 2011, a witness came forward and gave a formal statement identifying a specific suspect, someone with both status and secrecy on his side. That statement remained buried for years. Number 5. The Affair Theory. A more speculative theory, but one that persisted, was that Julie had become romantically involved with a powerful man, and the situation spiraled. In this version, her death was the outcome of a secret relationship gone awry, possibly with someone high profile. Rumors hinted at jealousy, exposure, or the threat of scandal as motive. Some believed her killing was personal, driven not by chance or impulse, but by fear. This story, often framed with lurid detail, floated in Nairobi's diplomatic circles for years. Never confirmed, never fully dismissed. Now, with all possibilities on the table, the question remains: of all these paths, which one leads to the truth? On the afternoon of September 6, 1988, Julie Ward was alone in the Maasai Mara. Her vehicle had been left behind for repairs, and she had gone to retrieve personal items from a nearby campsite. She never returned. What happened next, pieced together from witness accounts, forensic findings, and years of blocked investigations, points to a crime carried out not by chance, but by power. The most consistent and credible evidence leads to one man, Jonathan Moi, the eldest son of then Kenyan President Daniel Arap Moi. In 2011, a witness placed him at a remote safari lodge in the Maasai Mara on the very night Julie disappeared. The witness, who worked at the site, said Moi arrived late, stayed briefly, and left abruptly, contradicting his public claim that he was never in the area. His presence was kept quiet, and his movements unaccounted for. The scenario is stark. Julie, a foreign woman traveling alone, encounters a group of men with unchallenged authority. Among them, the son of the country's most powerful figure. Whether through force, coercion, or invitation, she is brought to a secluded location. According to an earlier anonymous intelligence source, multiple men were involved in the assault. Julie was overpowered, possibly raped, and then killed. Her death not planned, but made inevitable by what had been done. The aftermath was methodical. Her vehicle was moved and placed in a ditch. An SOS message was reportedly scraped into the dirt, suggesting a staged breakdown. Her body was dismembered with a blade, soaked in petrol and burned. It was meant to mimic an accident, or at least erase any trace of who was responsible. When her father arrived and began searching, local officials redirected him, then changed their tune only when the remains were found. The first instinct was not to investigate, it was to deny. The cover-up that followed was too extensive to be spontaneous. A forensic report was rewritten under pressure. Multiple witnesses were warned off. A key testimony naming Moy was quietly locked away for over a decade. The conclusion becomes inescapable. The killing was real, but the response was political. No court has ever prosecuted the man most likely responsible. But the threads lead back to a person with means, motive, and, crucially, the protection to avoid consequence. Jonathan Moy had the opportunity, he had the power, and he had, it appears, a state willing to shield him from the weight of what happened that night in the bush. Julie Ward's death was not a mystery of nature. It was a human act, deliberate, brutal, and buried under silence. But silence, as her father proved, does not last forever. Do you want to bring bad things with you wherever you go? Our episodes are now available as a podcast. Look us up on your favorite podcast app and listen to the most truth-seeking true crime podcast out there.